Just like last week's 3 tips, this week has nothing to do with how fancy your camera is or what kind of great technology you have. Though playing around with some new technology and tricks and techniques is kind of fun once in a while. Welcome to this week's 3 Minutes on Thursday. Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to this week's 3 Minutes on Thursday. I really appreciate you coming by again. We're going to fly through 3 more quick tips and tricks that might help you out this week take better pictures. If you're liking these tips and tricks and tutorials, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button on each individual video, and leave some comments if you've got questions or things that you'd like to see. I really appreciate you stopping by. Put 3 minutes on the clock. We're going to take a little look at 3 more rules or tips that might help you take better photos. Let's lead it off with this one. Fill up your frame. Too often we stand back at a distance from the photos and things are just small and they're not interesting to look at because we don't fill up the frame. In fact, don't be afraid to use the edges of your frame as you look at the viewfinder and let things go off the frame. Get as close as you can. Move your feet is the best zoom that I can suggest to you. We'll talk later about optical zoom versus digital zoom. I like to stay away from zooming as much as possible. But again, don't be afraid to let things go off the edge as long as you're not eliminating or cutting off any necessary details. This picture right here of my son eating an ice cream cone, yeah, part of his head is going off the frame, but that just leaves the simple background and really keeps the focus on his face and the ice cream cone, which is the most important, and it brings the viewer right in. Here's another shot I took of an elephant in Africa. Now, albeit I said to get close to your subject, you got to be careful about how close. But this one entirely fills the frame. Most of the elephant is going right out of the viewfinder, but it brings you into a really interesting and intimate part of an animal that we don't get a very close look at. Rule number 2, show depth in your photos. Try to show some semblance of the space that's happening. Except for macro photography, which we'll talk about in another episode, you want to give your viewers a sense of the space that is happening in the scene. Have a background, a middle ground, and a foreground. And instead of standing at the edge of the Grand Canyon and shooting a mile away, get something close in the foreground for visual interest. This picture right here is a picture that I took at a waterfall in Africa. Got in and got really close to that foliage that was growing just to show visual interest. We all know that it's a waterfall in the background, but bringing in something right there in the foreground gives a little more visual interest. This is another photo of a lake after a freshly fallen snow. Anybody could have stopped and taken a picture of the lake with the nice reflection, but I got something interesting in the foreground with a little bit of snow on it that gave a sense of depth and gave the viewer a chance to see how much depth and how much distance there was between foreground and background. And finally, tip number 3, set your exposure correctly. I know without a really super fancy camera this is tricky. Your phone, your camera doesn't do what our eyes naturally do in being able to process bright lights and dark shadows and be able to see things all at the same time. So you have to tell the camera what to do. And you have to find that magic spot by touching your phone screen to be able to set the exposure correctly. It's tricky. I'll give you some tips in an upcoming episode. A lot of times this happens at sunrise and sunset when we are seeing beautiful colors and we are seeing the whole gamut. Your phone and your camera don't. So this picture right here was taken at sunrise on a bow hunt in western South Dakota. I did want to retain some of the color in the sky, but still be able to expose the gate correctly. So I found some of those midtones, touched the screen somewhere in between, quick took the picture and was able to get the shot. So that's it for this week. Thanks again for stopping by. Stay tuned for some more tips and tricks next Thursday on a 3 Minutes for Thursday. And tune in during the week when we've got some vlog entries with different tutorials and just different things that are going on in my crazy world. So thanks again for stopping by. We'll see you again next time.